Touch the back of your arm. Feel those tiny, rough bumps? That is not a flaw. It is a living echo, a whisper from a world buried under miles of ancient ice. Over 40,000 years ago, the Earth did not forgive. The Pleistocene epoch was a brutal forge. Out here, where temperatures plummeted far below freezing, smooth skin was a death sentence. Meet the Neanderthals, the undisputed masters of the Ice Age. They were not brutes, but brilliant survivors, wrapped in a thick biological armor. To survive the biting wind, their bodies produced an overabundance of keratin. This protein thickened the skin, clogging pores to create a tough, resilient barrier against the cold. It locked in vital heat and guarded against microscopic cuts from wind-blown ice and razor-sharp rocks. In a frozen wasteland without medicine, preventing a tiny scratch meant preventing a fatal infection. So, the next time you try to scrub away those stubborn bumps, remember, you are trying to erase the very shield that kept your ancient ancestors alive. But thick skin alone was not enough to guarantee tomorrow. Because out on the steppes, a much darker, colder threat was gathering on the horizon. The true test of their bloodline was about to begin. The blizzard swallowed the sun, plunging the temperature to a deadly -20 degrees. Inside a shallow, frozen overhang, a small Neanderthal family huddled together. They were built for this, engineered by the brutal cold itself. Their barrel chests and short, powerful limbs were a masterclass in heat retention. Less surface area meant less heat lost to the freezing air. Even their wide, cavernous noses had a purpose, warming the freezing air before it reached their lungs. Every breath was calculated, every shiver a desperate attempt to stay alive. But biology has its limits, and the ice was relentless. In the center of their huddle, a small, precious fire flickered weakly. It was their only source of light, their only defense against the creeping frost. They fed it dry moss and bone, guarding it with their massive, calloused hands. Suddenly, the wind shifted, roaring into the cavern with terrifying force. A violent gust of snow whipped through the darkness, striking the fragile flames. The embers flared brightly for one desperate second, and then the fire died, leaving them in absolute freezing darkness. The fire was gone. And in the Ice Age, darkness was rarely empty. Without the flames, the temperature inside the shelter plummeted instantly. The cold did not just chill the skin, it bit deep into the bone. Their robust bodies went into survival overdrive. Muscles spasmed violently, generating internal heat through intense, involuntary shivering. But shivering consumes massive amounts of energy they could not afford to lose. In the pitch black, their senses shifted. Vision was useless. Hearing became their only lifeline, scanning the roaring wind for anomalies. Every gust of snow sounded like footsteps, every falling rock like a predator. The psychological toll was immense, a crushing weight of isolation and fear. Yet, they did not panic. Panic meant wasting heat. Panic meant death. They pressed closer, sharing every ounce of body warmth in the suffocating black. Outside, the storm raged on, erasing the world under a blanket of white. And then, piercing through the howl of the blizzard, a low, bone-rattling growl echoed from the dark. The predator's growl paralyzed the group. But not everyone was asleep or frozen in fear. If you struggle to wake up at dawn, if you feel most alive at midnight, you are carrying the chronotype of the night watchers, the ancient night owls. In a world where predators hunted in the dark, sleeping all at once was a death sentence. Neanderthal tribes evolved a staggered sleep cycle, an invisible shield of constant vigilance. While the exhausted elders and children fell into a deep, necessary slumber, certain individuals were genetically wired to remain wide awake, their senses peaking in the blackness. They were the sentinels of the pitch black. Their brains thrived when the sun died. One such watcher now sat at the edge of the huddle, gripping a heavy, flint-tipped spear. His dilated pupils scanned the blowing snow, tracking those massive amber eyes. A Eurasian cave lion, a colossal, maneless beast weighing over 700 pounds. It was starving, and it smelled the desperate warmth of human flesh hidden in the rock. The watcher did not wake the others. He simply tightened his grip on the rough wood. He was the only barrier between his family and a bloody massacre. Suddenly, the giant cat lunged into the cave. The impact was like a collapsing mountain. 700 pounds of muscle and claw hitting a wall of bone. The watcher was thrown back, but he did not let go of his spear. The deafening roar shattered the silence, instantly waking the slumbering tribe. The seconds the watcher bought them were the difference between life and slaughter. Neanderthals were apex predators in their own right. They fought with brutal, coordinated intelligence. Men and women alike surged forward, grabbing heavy spears and desperate handfuls of burning embers. In the claustrophobic dark, it was a chaotic blur of fangs, stone, and screaming wind. The lion slashed blindly in the confined space. Its razor-sharp claws caught flesh. A heavy thud echoed as one of the hunters was torn across the chest, thrown against the freezing stone. But the tribe pressed the attack, forming an impenetrable wall of thrusting spears in primal fury. Faced with an unbreakable defense, the injured lion realized its mistake. With a frustrated snarl, the beast retreated, dissolving back into the whiteout blizzard. The roar of the wind returned to fill the silence. They had survived the immediate threat, but as the adrenaline faded, a new, terrifying sound emerged from the dark. The wet, heavy gasps of the fallen hunter, his lifeblood pooling on the freezing rock. The hunter lay on the freezing stone, his chest torn open by the beast. Every ragged breath was agony, a blinding, white-hot pain. If you are someone who feels pain intensely, who is highly sensitive to a simple paper cut, do not call yourself weak. Your nervous system is working exactly as it was designed. Neanderthals evolved a hyper-reactive pain threshold, an ancient biological alarm system. In a world without medicine, ignoring a small cut meant dying of infection days later. Pain forced them to stop to care for the wound before it became a death sentence. But pain alone could not stop the bleeding. The cold stone was slick with his blood. Without modern bandages or stitches, he should have bled out in minutes. Yet, a microscopic miracle was happening inside his veins. His blood carried ancient genetic instructions, forcing it to clot with terrifying speed. The very same trait that causes dangerous blood clots in modern humans was a vital superpower here. Within moments, the heavy bleeding slowed to a halt, sealing the brutal gashes. He would live through the night. But survival is a relentless master. Healing requires massive energy, and the tribe's bellies were entirely empty. The blizzard broke just before dawn, revealing a world locked in frozen silence. But for the Neanderthals, morning did not bring relief. It brought the agonizing reality of starvation. To fuel their massive, heat-generating muscles, they needed thousands of calories a day. Without meat and thick animal fat, they would all freeze from the inside out. Leaving the wounded behind, the strongest hunters stepped out into the blinding white. They were not built for long-distance running. They were built for ambush and explosive power. In the deep, fresh snow, they spotted it. Massive, circular depressions, the tracks of a titan, a woolly mammoth. Following the trail required supreme intellect, reading the bruised ice and broken twigs. They moved silently through the frosty pines, their white breath trailing behind them. And then, through the thick morning fog, a colossal silhouette emerged, 14 feet tall, draped in layers of shaggy fur and armed with sweeping, curved tusks. To kill a mammoth, they had to get terrifyingly close, thrusting heavy spears directly into the beast. They spread out, gripping their stone-tipped weapons, preparing for the brutal clash. But the mammoth caught their scent. It turned, raising its trunk, and unleashed an earth-shattering roar. The battle was brutal, but the Neanderthals emerged victorious. A mountain of life-saving meat now lay in the snow. They did not hesitate. They carved through the thick hide, desperate for the warm, calorie-dense fat beneath. As the first bite of rich meat hit their tongues, a neurochemical explosion occurred in their brains. A massive surge of dopamine flooded their systems. The ultimate biological reward for defying death. If you find it impossible to stop eating sugar or constantly crave the rush of a glowing screen, you are not weak-willed. You are battling a primal reward system designed for the Ice Age. In a world where starvation was a daily threat, dopamine trained them to gorge on rare, high-energy resources. It was a survival mechanism, forcing them to hunt harder, push further, and crave the fat that kept them alive. Today, modern junk food hijacks this ancient circuitry, feeding a hunter's brain in a world of abundance. The hunters gorged themselves, their faces smeared with blood and fat, feeling the agonizing cold recede. But they did not forget their kin. They hauled massive cuts of meat back through the howling blizzard. Returning to the dark cave, the starving family eagerly devoured the raw, life-saving sustenance. For a brief moment, the crushing weight of the Ice Age lifted. They were full, but in the Pleistocene, victory was always temporary. From the dark corner of the cave, a wet, agonizing cough shattered their peace. The wounded hunter was burning up. The cave lion's claws were coated in deadly bacteria, microscopic predators invading his bloodstream. In this brutal era, there were no antibiotics, no clean hospitals to fall back on. The Neanderthal immune system had only one strategy against infection: absolute scorched earth warfare. If you suffer from severe allergies or battle an autoimmune disease like lupus or arthritis, your immune system is not broken. It is simply fighting a war that ended thousands of years ago. Inherited from our ancient cousins, your white blood cells are hyper-vigilant, violently attacking harmless pollen. But 40,000 years ago, this aggressive, overactive defense was the only thing standing between life and death. Inside the hunter's body, an explosive inflammatory response flooded the wound, raising his core temperature. The fever was a brutal weapon, designed to boil the bacteria alive before they could spread. But a fire that burns the enemy can also burn down the house. The tribe watched helplessly, applying cold snow to his forehead, hoping his robust heart would not give out. His massive chest heaved, his muscles convulsing violently against the freezing stone. The line between survival and death blurred as the internal battle reached its devastating peak. And then, suddenly, his violent convulsions stopped. His massive chest went completely still as the wind outside began to howl once more. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind, and then a deep, shuddering gasp filled the cavern. The fever had broken. His brutal, uncompromising immune system had won the war. Outside, the endless night finally surrendered to the dawn. The Ice Age did not break them. It forged them into something indestructible. They survived. And because they survived, their story did not end in the snow. Thousands of years later, as the glaciers retreated, they met our direct ancestors. They shared fires, they shared lives, and they shared their blood. The Neanderthals did not truly go extinct. They simply became part of us. Look closely at your own hands. Feel the rhythm of your own heart. You are carrying the legacy of the giants who stood against the endless winter. The bumps on your skin, your restless nights, your fierce immune system, they are not flaws. They are the metals of survival, passed down through 40,000 years. Your body is not a broken machine. It is a living, breathing museum. You are the Ice Age, and you are still here.